Hey guys, welcome back to the Dominant Dealer Podcast presented by Drivably. We had the pleasure of sitting down with ParkMobile Chief Marketing Officer Jeff Perkins. Jeff brings a very unique skill set to the auto industry, being from AutoTrader and now at ParkMobile. We chatted about the future of autonomous driving, key marketing activities that dealers should be thinking about. And again, we're all about trying to help those dealers dominate their space. Before we dive in, all of our dealers heading to NADA next week, please stop by the Drivably booth. We're giving away free poker chips, and if you make enough gambles at your dealership, you might as well take a bet on Drivably while you're at the show. We'll be in booth 1129C. This is in the First Time Exhibitor section, and we hope to see you there. So without further ado, here's Jeff Perkins. Enjoy, guys. Good day, everybody. We're joined by Mr. Jeff Perkins. I feel like the Mr. is necessary with such a fine human being. But Jeff is the Chief Marketing Officer for ParkMobile, and what I would call probably the best in the business in just marketing in general, everything related to the marketing game and in the auto industry as far as I'm concerned. So naturally, my introduction is not nearly as good as Jeff can do on his own. So Jeff, I'd love for you to share just quickly what you would tell a big audience if you're in front of one, which you are right now.
Thanks, Andrew. Yeah, you're really overly kind in those comments. Yeah, my kids don't think I'm nearly as cool as you do, clearly. Yeah, so I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of ParkMobile. For those who are not familiar with ParkMobile, we're the #1 app that lets you pay for parking on your phone. So instead of going to a parking meter or a pay station or a kiosk to make a parking payment, you just do it right in your phone. So simple, easy. It really makes just the parking process a little bit better for everybody. So I've been here about 2 years now. Really fun company, big growth. Tons of users coming on board on a weekly and monthly basis. So it's been a really fun ride. Probably a little bit more relevant to your audience, though, is my background, where I was 5 years at AutoTrader.com during a huge growth phase from about, I think it was 2007 to 2012, when we grew from a $400 million company to a $1 billion company and acquired Kelley Blue Book in the process and some other technology companies. But that was an amazing ride. And prior to that, I was in the advertising industry and spent a lot of my time there on the automotive space. So my last job in advertising was managing the digital marketing for Volvo brand. And so I spent a lot of time with dealers and working with dealers on effective digital marketing programs. So pretty deep experience in the automotive industry. And even ParkMobile today, a lot of people don't know, ParkMobile is 50% owned by BMW and Daimler. So still kind of have a lot of connections in the automotive space. And we're even though we focus on parking, a lot of our future vision of the company revolves around the automobile, because as in the future, when you have cars driving people as opposed to people driving cars with autonomous vehicles on the road, it opens up a lot of interesting opportunities for us when you think about, okay, when those autonomous cars drop someone off, where do they go to park? And how do they pay for parking? And how do they procure services like charging or cleaning or maintenance while they're not in use? So those are a lot of the kind of future state things that we're thinking about right now, which are super interesting and really, I think, will have a big impacts on the automotive industry overall.
No, it's really cool. Well, I usually like to go through and talk about your life in general, but you just spurred me on to something that I think that our listeners would like to hear. So, like, when you think about BMW and Volvo as a business and why owning a company like yours is so important, I'd love to get your insight on maybe how you think they think about it, or if they've actually verbalized it to you guys as a company.
Right. So a lot of the OEMs out there are thinking more broadly about automotive and cars and the future of vehicles. So they're thinking less about just the metal, and they're thinking more about overall mobility. And mobility is a much broader ecosystem where, the car plays a part, but maybe transit plays a part, scooters or bikes play a part. So the way the industry is going is that you have this kind of ecosystem of mobility solutions out there. And the reason the OEMs are invested in companies like ParkMobile, and they have tons of other companies they're invested in the mobility space, is because they really they see a future state where that's different than today. Today it's people own a car, they drive that car, and they park that car. Whereas in the future you may not own a car, right? Or you may be in some different kind of hybrid car sharing service or ride sharing service. And so the industry is evolving and changing in different ways. And the OEMs are, trying to stay ahead of that curve by investing in companies like ParkMobile that have interesting technologies that are really positioned well to be part of this new ecosystem of mobility solutions on the market.
No, absolutely. I can't remember what publication I saw it in, but I feel like one of the most contrarian points on mobility, autonomous vehicles, et cetera, is all related to, let's call it 30, 50 years from now when all the cars are just, they're like their own being and do whatever they want, right? That congestion is going to get worse, and naturally solutions like yours become more vital. Like, how much do you buy into just, hey man, if the fare in a autonomous vehicle is going to be less than a bus ride and more available, is that going to impact congestion, or that article just way over the top of what is going to happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a futurist by any means, but I could tell you a little bit about the macro trends we see in the industry, and that's the biggest trend is that everybody is moving into cities, and this is globally. So people are generally moving out of rural suburban areas, congregating in these big cities where all the high-paying jobs are, where all the opportunity is, and where the generally just people want to be. They want to have that in-city quality of life. And so as more and more people are moving into cities are facing this real crunch when it comes to congestion. And that's a major concern for cities everywhere. And one of the challenges is that the cities are still trying to figure out what to do. And there's tons of technology out there, but there's not necessarily there's not a one solution that everyone's driving towards. So a lot of the cities we work with as clients, they're trying a lot of different things. They're looking at, we're gonna bring in different kinds of transit options. We're gonna do more carpooling options. And so you have all these different new solutions that are kind of converging right now. But at the end of the day, everyone's just trying to figure it out. And the one thing I do know, though, is that there's going to be low tolerance among cities when autonomous cars eventually come on the road for those cars to just be cruising. Right? So that's one thing that we know for sure. So if a car is not in use, it's going to have to find a place to go park. And that's really where we come in. And we have already, we're already in the dashboard of all new model BMWs. And so if you take that 5 or 10 years out, when those cars start becoming autonomous, ParkMobile is going to help those cars kind of get to a parking spot.
Yeah.
And we have technology now that we will be able to lift the gate, which is really cool, without having to have a human there to really pull a ticket. And so and then, once the car is in the garage, we could send out all kinds of signals to, charge. Someone there could get the car charged. Someone could get the car washed, all the things that the car needs before it kind of heads back on the road.
Yeah. I wonder, so is there a, and as you get the sun back on over there, is there do you guys see the business going into, I almost feel like you guys will become like the air traffic controller of vehicles in a city, right? Putting them in the most, promotable spot to help the citizens. Like, I wonder if it ever gets to a place like, hey, you move into okay, so I live in the suburbs of Phoenix, right? We're about 30 minutes away from Phoenix, but if people are using services like that, the cars could be parking in my neighborhood, right? Like, do you guys then go start knocking on doors like, hey, for $5 a month, like when a car needs to park in your driveway, it can do that? Like, is that like a part of the thought process? Because even in bigger cities, like I'm from Chicago, lived in New York, like the difference between the hyper concentration of neighborhoods versus the like where you have condos and driveways, like it's not like 10 miles, it's usually like a mile or even half a mile outside of city center. So you'll have that opportunity in Chicago, New York, etc. I'd love to understand that at all.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be as much parking at some guy's house during the day, but I think what you'll probably see more options for parking maybe a mile away from where you're going, but then integrating with other solutions that will get you that last mile.
Yeah.
So it could be that I need to get to my office. It's in the downtown area. But I know I can't drive downtown because it's gridlock or streets are closed or I have to pay a congestion tax, which a lot of cities are looking at. So I'm going to park a mile or two out, but then I know I could either I could get a ride hail like right in that area, or I could scooter, or I could get an e-bike. And so I think you're going to see some of those solutions all coming together really to facilitate more of a seamless mobility journey, which is pretty interesting. And we talk a lot to cities about the need for cities to figure out their mobility strategy, and that's something that I think is missing in almost every major American city is a full mobility strategy, because traditionally everything is kind of operated in a silo. Like transit people, there are transit people and there are driving people, and then there are the walkers or the bikers or the scooter people. And that was the kind of traditional way of looking at mobility in a city. But what we've seen through a lot of our research is that many people are using multiple mobility options to get to the same place or to get to their final destination. And that means they drive to the train, park, take the train in, get off the train, and scooter the last mile to their office, right? And so what basically that means is consumers are creating their own mobility strategies because cities aren't necessarily doing it right now. So I think in the future, though, you're going to have more and more cities helping people figure out the optimal journey to get to their destination, because they're going to have to. Because if you don't do that, all these cities are just going to be crushed with congestion, and it's going to have a major impact on quality of life, GDP for those cities. I think what we believe is that the cities that have the best mobility strategies overall are going to be the best places to live. And so, that's a little bit about the way we think about it, and the way I think a lot of the OEMs are thinking about it. But, we're very early. I mean, there's not, there are no pure autonomous cars on the road right now. So we'll have to see. But, I think in the next 5 years, you're going to see some major changes. And in the next 10 years, you're going to see some wholesale changes in the way people get around and people are mobile. So it's a really exciting time, and it's an exciting industry to be a part of.
Without a doubt, I can echo that sentiment for sure. So I'd like to put a timeout on everything current state and future state and actually go backwards a little bit. I'd love to get the 3, 5, or 10-minute story, whatever you think is appropriate, on just Jeff growing up. Who was he? Where'd he come from? What his life was like? What you were into? What did you think you were going to be when you were 8-year-old kid just causing havoc in your neighborhood?
Well, I mean, that must have been you. You're clearly projecting how you were as an 8-year-old on me. I was a good kid.
Destroying everything, 100%.
Yeah, I grew up in most of my childhood in New Jersey. I spent a little bit of time in California. And I in high school, I was a basketball player, but I also kind of got very involved in student government, and I was very into student government and thought I wanted to go into politics, which led me to go to college at American University in Washington, D.C., where I had the unique privilege to be a White House intern, which was really cool. And it was the Clinton administration. And yes, I was there the same time as Monica. Even though I did not know her, she clearly had much better access to the president than I did.
Confirmed.
But we were there around the same time. Yeah, but it was a great experience. The other experience I had, though, in college was working for my local mayor. So I worked for the mayor of Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which was the town I lived in. New Jersey is a suburb, really, of Philadelphia. So all of my team affiliations are to the Eagles and the Sixers and the Flyers and the Phillies. But and people in New Jersey that live in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, many times will just say they're from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And then people ask what part of Philadelphia, and you say, well, the New Jersey part of Philadelphia. And
That's great.
It's exit 4 on the turnpike for the Jersey people out there. But what I learned working for my mayor was that when you work in a smaller company, or when you work in a certain kind of organization, the ability to make an impact it was something that I really liked. And working for the mayor, I did this. We did a adopt a highway program. I remember there was this major highway that ran through the town of Cherry Hill, and it was just a mess. All the medians had these weeds that were about 6 feet high. It was really unattractive. It made the city look very unattractive. It's a very nice city.
Yeah.
So during my internship there, I organized a adopt a highway program. I solicited local businesses to donate a little bit of money every month so we can get those median strips landscaped to make that road look a lot nicer. Over the summer, I was able to develop and execute that program. And then we got the landscaping done without really any public funds. It was all local businesses that operated in that area that we were able to solicit to be part of the program. And it was great. And it made me really, as a pretty young kid, like aware that you can make a big impact if you put in the effort and if you're in the right situation. And so I think that's something that always has guided me through my career, is putting myself in places where I would be able to make as big an impact as I can in the organization, and an impact that I could see, and an impact that other people could see and feel. And so that's always, I think, in my career been a big driver when I have been at companies or even just evaluating new opportunities. Do I think this is a place I can go and I can make a significant impact on the organization? And so that's what kind of drives me. I think in my professional career, I see people who are like me, or probably we qualify as builders. And then there are also people who qualify as more of the managers. And I probably wouldn't go into a situation where it would be more of just a pure play management. I like to build and make an impact. And that all came out of that experience working for my local mayor. But then, back to kind of the origin story, got out of college, ended up getting a job in advertising in New York City, which was super fun. Did that for about 10 years, and then made my way down to Atlanta to work at AutoTrader.com in that kind of 2007-ish time period. And that really got me here into Atlanta, and I've been here ever since, jumping around between many of the tech companies in town.
Let's talk AutoTrader a little bit. I'd love to just get your general insights of that. Maybe not just AutoTrader, but that business in general of, the digital retailing space, the digital exposure space in car dealerships. Like how complex of a space is that for dealerships every day?
I think it's very complex. And the thing that I always used to talk to dealers about when I was at AutoTrader was that the old way of car shopping has really evolved. And every city has the dealer row, right? And you drive down and you could hit every single dealer, and it's all in a couple miles, and they're all just lined up on dealer row. What we found at AutoTrader is that dealer row, it's not that it was going away, but it was transporting online, and now you have this virtual dealer row. But the challenge for a lot of car dealers is that the virtual dealer row is not 2-mile stretch. The virtual dealer row now is a 50-mile radius, or even 100-mile radius, or even the entire United States. And that creates a lot of new challenges for dealers that used to have kind of the market cornered. I mean, if you were a Ford dealer in a certain city, you knew that you have your territory, and the nearest Ford dealer is going to be way away. And so you have your people, they have their people. You're not hopefully competing for the same customer. But digital has just opened up the floodgates, for people to find the right car at the right price at the dealer that they're comfortable going to. And one thing we found at AutoTrader, it was really amazing. The difference between a dealer that was an effective marketer and the dealer that was not an effective marketer could be a 10 to 100 times swing in the number of vehicles they're able to get through their dealership on a weekly or monthly basis.
Mm-hmm.
We always went out to dealers, and one of our things that we always preach was merchandise, because we were constantly shocked at the number of cars that were listed on AutoTrader that maybe only had one photo.
Yeah.
Right. And that was priced above the market in those markets. And then you would look at it, and we had a lot of data to look at. So we could always see, okay, let's look at all the cars on this dealer's lot that are over 45 days old. And the two commonalities with those cars were they only had one picture, so they were poorly merchandised, and usually they were either at or above the average market price for similar vehicles. Right? So it's not complicated.
Mm-hmm.
If you have the right car, you price it right, and then you merchandise it as well as you can, you are going to sell that car faster. And what was interesting is that, okay, so dealers started to catch on to that. So dealers, all right, I'm going to put 10 pictures of the car. But then the more progressive dealers said, okay, I'm going to not just put pictures. I'm going to take my camera phone out. I'm going to do a walk around of the car. And I'm going to go sit inside the car and turn it on. And so then those dealers started getting crazy results. They were really creating this virtual experience. Because at the end of the day, if a consumer doesn't have to go out and visit 5 dealerships and they could do all of this virtually, they would much prefer to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the new normal for car dealers. You're not going to get just a ton of people walking in anymore, right? It's all going to be done online, virtually. So the better job you do of creating a great experience in your virtual dealership online, the better results you're going to get. And that was completely true. Dealers that merchandise better, created a better experience, were getting better results on AutoTrader. And it was really an amazing thing to see. And as more and more dealers kind of caught on, it became tougher. But at the end of the day, they were giving the consumer a much better experience, and they were able to do more of the online shopping, less of the jumping from dealership to dealership in the offline world. And it was generally a preferable experience for the consumer.
Yeah. I've been in the car business for, let's call it 2 years would be a stretch. And I think for someone who has been on the business side of different technology industries, the thing that has been very interesting for me is many of the trends in automotive, people, or at least from what I can see in public areas, is that people take very extreme positions on all of these topics. So a non-example of that, like when I was working in the HR technology world, right? So Workday is blowing up that space. They're doing a lot of innovative, new great things. When you brought that up to somebody who's working at like Oracle, SAP, or any other big technology company in the space, they might call out things that were going to be difficult in their business, or they weren't really sure about how they were going to get over these humps, et cetera, et cetera. But it seemed to be more like tested and just slow. And the big learning curve for me is on a daily basis, I'll see someone on LinkedIn or anything else, just like all the way to the right or left on a particular issue. And the ones that I feel like circulate my feeds are, Carvana, Tesla, like these mobile service centers at dealerships. Like it's either this is the worst thing humanity has ever seen, or this is the future type of thing. And there's less of this in between. I mean, what do you think about I'd love to get your perspective on if those things you've noticed. Well, I'd imagine maybe you guys probably feel some of that in what you guys do, but why is that? Why are people so like, it's either yes or no on all these things, and the yeses and nos are like extreme yeses and nos. There's
Right.
less kind of commonality in the middle.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing about AutoTrader, I mean, the reason AutoTrader was such a big success from when it started was because they kind of stayed in the middle lane, which is interesting. So when AutoTrader was getting started, it was the .com boom. All the talk was about, oh, the death of the car dealer, right? That was the talk then. I think what's old is new again, because now
Yeah.
you have a lot of that talk now. But it was all about the death of the car dealer, and all shopping is going to be car shopping is going to be online. And what the brilliance of AutoTrader was that they recognized that there was not going to be a death of the car dealer. The car dealer was still going to be a part of the auto buying ecosystem, but they were going to be kind of a part of it in a different way. And the consumer experience was going to evolve a bit, but it wasn't going to do this whole shift where huge dealerships are going to close down and now it's just an online buying process directly from the OEM. So that, and you really had, like, you know, when I was at AutoTrader, there were two sides of that discussion. But Chip Perry, who was the CEO of AutoTrader when I was there, he would always talk about, you know, our job was to kind of walk this fine line in the middle where you are a partner to the dealership and you're helping the dealer sell more cars, right? But at the same time, you're providing a good consumer experience where you're helping people find the right car that they want, that's in their area, that's the price they're willing to pay, and make it a really good experience. But you're not going too far over to the consumer side where you're basically making the dealers lose a ton of money, and you're not going too far over to the dealer side where you're not being transparent with the consumer. And so I think AutoTrader was able to brilliantly really walk that fine line in the middle. And generally, I think businesses that are able to figure out how to thread that needle are going to be the most successful in a category. Yeah, I'm not a huge believer in being on the extremes. I think you have to maybe take more of a middle position and figure out, all right, what's gonna be the middle ground on this, and let me see if that's where I could play, because generally that's where the majority are going to be.
So let's play that game a little bit. So you're kind of telling me you're always going to take the middle anyway, but let's see if we can get you to go left or right on one of these big car trends. So like Carvana, like, you buying it, you selling it? What are you doing?
I'm buying it.
Yeah,
I'm buying it. I think they've proven the model. It's going to be I think a good player in the industry. But at the same time, I'm not gonna sell AutoNation to buy Carvana.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right. I'll probably have both.
yeah. Like most things, the answer is usually both.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's true. You want to, you know, if you look at it as like a stock portfolio, you always want to have a balanced portfolio. You want to hedge your bets. You say, you know, I'm going to buy some of this. I'm going to buy some of this. But you know, I think digital marketing generally has opened up, you know, more opportunities for both the Carvanas and for the traditional dealerships of the world to be very competitive. And, you know, it really all comes back to having the right car that's in demand and pricing it right.
Yeah.
And if you could do that consistently, you'll probably be a pretty successful business. Pricing it right, and then figuring out the marketing side of it. How do you get people aware of that car? It's at your dealership, and a lot of that just comes down to effective marketing practices.
Yeah.
So those are the things. You know, I think Carvana is a really interesting business. I think it's you know, I like what they're doing. I've not bought a car through Carvana yet, but I think I really like what they're doing and their approach.
Yeah, from my understanding, like I think on the consumer side, like, you know, anytime you're first to market with something like that, or at least in mass appeal, you're in a great position. Some of the things that I've recently become aware of is like they're starting to almost consign on dealers' behalf. So they go into a market, instead of saying, hey, we're gonna
like we're going to beat you. No, it's like, hey, how about us just let your cars show up in our search results?
Right.
And I almost feel like it's a little Amazonian on like, hey, we'll just use the entire infrastructure that already exists for our business, which I think is really smart. And I think there's, almost in the way that, companies like Fair have tried to go on a market where they're more of a supplement and an asset versus a competitor. I think it's really smart. And there's going to be dealers that are going to play ball. They're going to say, hey, whatever we got to do to get the customers, we'll do it. But I think it's, who you're getting in bed with sometimes will be, kind of plays a big role in what starts to happen later. But it's all very interesting. What do you think about like, Tesla versus the world in terms of, electronic vehicles? They've had to bat down so many doors from a legislative front, a manufacturing front, patenting front, you name it. And now you have, like people that own you, BMW, Porsche, Audi, who are super serious about playing in that space. Do you think they can weather that storm and their brand, withstand the full court press from those big guys?
Well, I think they're proving that they can, and they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
If you look at the luxury sedan market, they are absolutely crushing it. They're absolutely crushing in that market, and they're taking share from a lot of the other traditional luxury sedan OEMs. So they're doing very well. They're operating differently. They could be a lot more nimble because they don't have the legacy dealership structure that they have to deal with. But I tend to think of Tesla as not as I don't think. Sorry,
Sun goes down early in Atlanta.
I have these auto lights in my office, and they're in a place where I don't think it detects my motion. I don't think it's an all or nothing. I think Tesla is going to have a strong market share in the industry. I think they've proven that they make a great product. They've driven huge awareness, huge demand. They've been very smart about it. They have it's a great experience when you go into a Tesla showroom. So they've done a lot of things right. But at the end of the day, they're still going to be a relatively small player in the industry.
Yeah.
And I think, but there's going to be more than enough market share for them to be a very valuable, very profitable company that's very successful. So I look at them as, I think they're probably not gonna. I don't think they're gonna fundamentally change the entire structure of the industry, but they are. They're creating a lot of headaches for a lot of OEMs, and I see them continuing to grow and get bigger. But just because they get bigger doesn't mean they're going to displace every single OEM out there. So I think they've carved out a niche. They have their place. They've done something that's very hard to do, which is launch a brand new automotive company and do a lot of things differently than the traditional way. And I think they'll continue to grow and be successful. But I think a lot of the other OEMs in the industry will continue to grow and be successful as well. So I think they're going to figure out, they'll nestle into their sweet spot, and probably in several years their growth might slow a bit, and they might look more like a traditional OEM eventually.
Interesting. Well, the history books will tell us. I have no
Yes.
doubt. We'll see what happens. As you keep your marketing hat on, which is always on 24/7. Like, what would you say are the biggest trends that you've noticed that are impacting, our listeners in car dealerships today? Like, what should they be hyper aware of?
I think that car dealers generally are, it's really interesting. Car dealers are really good at selling cars and servicing cars and running a profitable business. That's, the MO of most of those car dealers. They know how to do the car sales thing really well. They know how to buy the right car, sell it at a profit. Where I think dealerships have struggled is kind of adapting to the new normal for marketing. Because it used to be you would go and buy, your local news, and you would do the big weekend sales, and you take out the full page ad in the local paper, and a lot of those media options just either don't exist anymore or are cost prohibitive for many dealers to operate in, or just don't work.
Mm-hmm.
Frankly, the famous quote from John Wanamaker, who was the famous retailer and one of the pioneers in advertising. He always used to say, "I know that half of my advertising is wasted. I just don't know which half."
Mm-hmm.
But today, you could track everything, and you can test and learn, and you can make modest investments to see if certain tactics work, and you could continually optimize. So I think the world is much different. I mean, we used to see dealers at AutoTrader that were spending $50,000 on a Sunday, the full page ad on Sundays, or a supplement on Sundays, and they would just basically cut 100% of that spend, and they would put money in AutoTrader, and they would pay AutoTrader, I don't know, $2,000 to $3,000 a month to have all their inventory listed on AutoTrader 24/7 in front of millions of in-market shoppers in their local area. The dealers who adapted to that very soon became very successful and very profitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think still the dealership world is evolving in digital marketing. If I were running a dealership today, I would probably spend a lot of money on hiring digital marketing consultants, digital marketing agencies, to focus on making sure I had the most prominence possible on all the third-party listing sites like AutoTrader, all the search engines, and then in key social media sites like Facebook and Instagram. I would be laser focused on those channels, because that is where people spend their time. That's where you're able to reach people, and that's where you can be super targeted. So in Facebook and Instagram, you can target people who are the right fit for the inventory you have at your dealership. So if you're selling Subarus, you could target people who are outdoor enthusiasts, right? You could target. You're able to really get very granular with the way you serve up your advertising and the way you're allocating your marketing dollars. So that's, I think, really interesting for dealers. I've seen a lot of dealers just still continuing to spend heavily in the local media in the areas that are more untargeted. So if I were at a dealer, if I were running marketing a dealer, I would just go all in on digital. I would probably spend next to nothing on traditional ads, and just make sure that I was targeting the right person with the right message at the right time to get my inventory moving as quickly as possible. The other side of it is more on the relationship side with your current customers. Because again, you sell a car to someone, you hopefully that person has a good experience. They come back to the dealership for service, because that's where you could really make significant revenue for the dealership through retaining person through service and hopefully selling them their next car. And that comes down to being very active with your email list and your database, and making sure you're constantly monitoring social media, you're addressing any issues people have on social media or review sites. So making sure you're not just positioning yourself as kind of a lot of one and done sales, but actually retaining people that have bought cars from you, and make sure they're coming back and continuing to buy from you over time.
No, that's really, really good stuff. Thinking about somebody spending $50,000 on a newspaper ad, like I almost threw up a little bit. And those things probably still exist today. When you said the profile of a Subaru, I was thinking along the same lines, but I was thinking more of like soccer mom and dad, nature enthusiast in Salt Lake City, Utah. Like that's right where I went. I don't think I saw more than 2 Subarus my whole life until I went to Salt Lake for the first time, and it was every car.
Oh yeah.
Any dealers that come to mind for you that were dominant that way? Like anybody that you worked with that you were like, if you were trying to help a colleague mirror those type of operations from a marketing perspective, that you could call out. And if you do call them out, we're going to send them some swag and give them some free product. No pressure at all.
Yeah, probably the 2 most impressive dealership operations that I came across during my time at AutoTrader were Lens Truck World, located in Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, and Gibson Auto World, located in Orlando, Florida. Now, what made these dealerships very unique was that they specialized. So they didn't just sell whatever cars were in demand in the market. They were truck car dealers, domestic truck car dealers. But they were really clever in the way they bought. So they bought the most unique cars they could find, the most unique. So they would have all these double quad cab, things that were really hard to find in a lot of markets. And they would just go to auction and stock up on these really unique trucks, right? They both had these big refurbished centers. They made the trucks totally pristine. But then I think what the magic really was the marketing, because they didn't just sell locally, they sold nationally. And they even, if you flew in to go come pick up your truck, they would pick you up at the airport.
Oh, wow.
Right.
That's great.
And Lens was in, it's not like a high traffic destination, Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. But tons of people would go to this place to get their trucks. They would fly into whatever is the closest airport to get their truck. But the reason they were able to fly in and have confidence in this truck is because the Lens guys did these really in-depth walkthroughs of every truck with video. So and this was even before you had fancy iPhones. These were just like, they take out a flip phone or a camera phone, but they would walk around the car. They'd go into the undercarriage. They'd show any dent or ding that was on the car. They'd go in the car. They'd turn on the engine. So you're sitting there in New Jersey and you're like, oh, I like that Ford F-150 quad cab thing that they have in Wisconsin. But how do I know it's a good car? It's good. Well, they showed you everything about it. There was no guesswork. They had a million pictures. They had great video. And that really made a difference in those businesses. Those businesses put so much content about these cars online and had such unique cars. They were able to really draw in a national audience to come look at these cars and then buy these cars. And those guys were just brilliant at it. And they would sell hundreds of trucks a month, very unique trucks. And so that's the other thing that I think is something that not every dealership can do that, because a lot of times dealerships want to have, if you're a franchise dealership or you're a independent used car dealership, obviously you want to sell what you can sell. But sometimes by specializing, by focusing on a specific kind of car, you could really carve out a nice niche for yourself, and you don't have to be confined by the market you're in.
Absolutely.
You could sell nationally. And these guys are just, it's amazing, the businesses they've built in selling these trucks. So that's really interesting. The other thing they did, I thought was really smart, was they would write these very detailed descriptions about every car. So what a lot of dealerships would do sometimes is they would take the information about a car out of the DMS system and just some VIN explosion of copy that goes into the vehicle listing. And it doesn't tell the story at all of the car. It's just kind of like, this car, it's very specific with here are the details of this car.
Build data.
Yeah. And so what the guys from Lens and Gibson would do, they would go in and write these really detailed stories of these cars. And they figured out things that would get people to really be interested. Like, this car has never been in snow. This truck has never seen snow, right? We got it in Florida. It's never been in snow. And people would love that because everyone knows snow puts years onto a car. So if I could get that truck that's never been in snow, I'd prefer that. But they do these detailed descriptions, really merchandising the heck out of them. And it's like you always say, like, it's not rocket science here. Marketing works if you do it the right way. And so those guys are case studies of that. They've been able to grow these businesses through digital channels, through having the right cars, the right inventory, and then doing a really good job marketing. And they've created great businesses.
No, that's great. We'll look forward to reaching out to both of those organizations, get them some sweet teas and some other stuff, and definitely get them access to our product. Well, Jeff, I think we've come to our time together. Had a great time. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to doing it again.
Awesome. Thanks, Andrew.